There's advice on almost every aspect of parenting you could possibly think of, including how to get your child to speak. The media article Talking Toddlers suggests exposing your child to multiple speakers. It claims that if a word is repeated by only one speaker, a 14-month-old will fail to learn the word. However, if the word is spoken by a variety of speakers, the child will learn the word immediately. But we want to let you know that it's always good to take advice with a pinch of salt.
So how do children begin acquiring language? Natural speech is a continuous articulation of sounds, meaning that unlike in written text, speakers don't leave a pause between each word. So how do infants segment words from this stream of speech sounds? It's through a process called statistical word segmentation. Let's break it down. First, children identify the syllables. A syllable is a unit of speech, so the phrase happy baby contains 4 syllables: ha, pi, bay, and bee. Then infants make judgments about the patterns in syllable sequences. If 2 syllables co-occur consistently, then they are likely to make up a word, while if 2 syllables co-occur inconsistently, they are likely to be part words and occur across word boundaries. These patterns in syllable sequences enable infants to segment the words from continuous speech. Each speaker speaks with a different style, affect, and rate, which affects the acoustic film of the word. Also, infants tend to hear language from a range of speakers such as carers, friends, and family. Hence, variation in voice is an important source of variability in natural language, which could potentially affect how well infants can detect the patterns in syllable sequences, thereby affecting the segmenting of words from speech. Estes and Lou Williams investigated how changes in people's voices affects how well infants aged 7 to 8 and 10 to 11 months can segment words from speech. Infants listened to a speech stream consisting of 4 words from an artificial language spoken by 8 different females. Other cues to word boundaries were controlled so that infants could only use patterns in syllable sequences to locate word boundaries. In the test phase, a cartoon was played on a screen to capture the infant's attention. Once the infant looked at the screen, a new animation played, while the infant heard a new voice say 2 syllables that made up either a word or a part word from the initial speech stream. This item was repeated until the infant looked away from the screen. The time from when the infant looked at the screen to when they looked away was recorded and equated to the infant's listening time. This was used to determine whether infants could or could not detect patterns in syllables and segment words despite voice changes. If infants successfully segmented words, then their listening time should differ significantly when they heard a word compared to a part word. In a secondary experiment, methods were repeated, with the same speech stream being produced by just 2 speakers instead of 8. This enabled experimenters to compare infants' word segmentation abilities under conditions of high variation in voice and low variation in voice.
Let's discuss their findings. Under high variation in voice, there was a significant difference in listening times between words and part words. However, under low variation in voice, there wasn't a significant difference in listening times. This meant that infants at both ages were unable to segment words from the speech stream when it was produced by 2 speakers, but could when produced by 8 speakers. The study suggests that exposure to language from many speakers may lead to more successful performance in statistical word segmentation. The findings are pretty compelling, but let's consider both the good and the bad. For one thing, the artificial language meant that all words presented were unfamiliar to infants, but this also means that the stimulus was far from natural. With only 4 2-syllable words spoken in a monotonous voice, it's hard to imagine any fluent speech stream between 8 adults ever occurring like this in a natural setting. Also, the sample size varied a lot across the experiment. When testing high voice variation in speech stream, there were 50 participants. However, when testing low voice variation, the number of participants halved to 25. That's quite a small sample size, which leads us to ask, how well do the findings apply to the general population? Overall, this research does provide insight into the potential mechanisms used by infants in segmenting speech. But how does it relate to the advice given to you as parents?
The tip given in Talking Toddlers was to expose your child to multiple speakers. It claims that if a word is repeated by only one speaker, a 14-month-old will fail to learn the word. However, if the word is spoken by a variety of speakers, the child will learn the word immediately. Firstly, the media article hasn't provided any examples for you to implement their advice in everyday life. The claim is vague and doesn't specify the age group that would benefit from this, how many speakers to expose your child to, and how it would benefit your infant. Secondly, although the article backs up its claims with a research study from the University of Iowa, there is no direct reference to this article, meaning that the information can't be cross-checked. Even if this research study was conducted as claimed, its methodology doesn't reflect a naturalistic learning setting. However, in many respects, the information in the media article is accurate. Estes and Lou Williams' study suggests that variation in speakers' voices was associated with better word segmentation performance. So while the repetition of a single novel word by multiple speakers seems unrealistic, exposure to natural speech and conversations may be helpful to infants in language acquisition. Encourage these conversations and interactions through development to promote statistical word segmentation.